Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Help for HDTV. Today, we have Tanita Allen on with us, and she just wrote her book, We Exist. It came out a couple weeks ago, and the community has already shown a great response and an embrace to this book. And we wanted to come on and interview the writer and talk about her story a little bit and then a little bit about her book. So, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on with us. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you both.
let's start by just telling everyone about your HD story a little bit.
Okay, my name is Tanita, and my HD story is not like a lot of people's HD story. I did not come from a family of HD history, a family history. So therefore, I did not know that HD was even in my family. And I had very limited knowledge of this disease when I started showing symptoms. This is going back in 2010. I started showing symptoms of the disease, and symptoms where I would have my toes, my fingers were moving by themselves. I would twitch. I even had vocal tics. I had vocal tics. I had my upper body, the upper trunk would move and contort from side to side and front and back. I would appear as though I was like intoxicated or under the influence of something, or mentally having some kind of mental disorder. I was accused of having those things.
Sure. And is your mother's that you inherited the gene from, or your father?
My mother, I inherited from my mother after I was diagnosed in 2012. It took till 2012 when I was officially diagnosed with a DNA test. My mother and father were both tested to see which parent it came from. And we strongly suspected that it was my mother's side based on, after doing more research on the disease and things of that sort, I assumed that it was my mother, and I was right. We're an actual match. We both have the same CAG repeat.
Was she having any similar symptoms, or did you notice anything that just seemed to change in her that made you feel like it could be your mom, or was it more of like ancestors and things like that?
It was more of an ancestry thing. I look at and see several mixed ethnicities on easily. My mother, she was not symptomatic at the time that she was tested. My mother's CAG repeat is a 39, and I'm a 39. So a 39 is what is called reduced penetrance. And I'm pretty sure you guys know this. Reduced penetrance people, we're a very small minority within the HD community. The last thing I read was that we were 5% of the HD population. And so we're in this gray matter. We're like in the gray area where we could be symptomatic or not. And people typically in this area will usually be symptomatic later in life.
Right.
So I was showing symptoms at 35 years old instead of 65, like they predicted that I should have. But they attributed that to my environment that I was living in. I was living in an environment where I was breathing in carbon monoxide and gas poisoning for about 22 months.
So you mentioned your symptoms being similar to being intoxicated with different movements and slurred speech and things like that. And then you also mentioned your environment. So right now, you look amazing. I'm not seeing what was described. And so what I'm wondering is, was it medication that helped? Was it environmental change? What changed your symptoms into what they are today?
That's a very good question. Thank you so much for that. I worked really hard to get to this point, and I worked with a really good team. I have a cocktail of drugs that I take twice a day. Okay. The choreotic movements will never go away completely. What you're looking at is somebody who's heavily medicated on medicine. I take Xenazine twice a day, and I've been taking Xenazine twice a day since 2012. And I take a bunch of other medications to counteract the side effects of that drug.
Sure. Let's go back real quick about diagnosis, because I know that diagnosis, you have touched on a couple things. One, you're in the gray zone, right? You had no family history, which was hard for diagnosis right in the beginning. And you also have touched on a little bit of discrimination, even within your own community, right, of doctors, your medical team. So let's go back to diagnosis and let's talk a little bit about the struggles and what was told to you, the misconceptions or what you went through. I know you went through a lot in 2 years in a condensed kind of way about what you had to struggle to even get diagnosed.
I have to tell you that I was told that first I was accused of being a drug addict. When I would come into the emergency room, I would be shaking or I'd have uncontrolled, and they would say, "Stop it. Stop shaking. Why are you shaking? Have you been drinking? Have you been doing drugs?" And I would say no. And then they would do a drug test anyways. You know that they make you do a urine test with blood work, and they would come back clean. And then they would send down psychiatry. They would send down a psychiatrist, usually the psychiatrist on doing rounds or whatever. And then they would talk to me and say, "Are you safe at home? Are you a victim of domestic violence?" Things like that. I would get thrown those kind of questions. I was asked, "Have you been diagnosed with being bipolar or anything like that?" And I would say, "No, absolutely not." And then I was told I was sent, because of the movements of the toes and fingers, I was advised to see a neurologist, specifically a movement disorder specialist. So I saw a huge amount of movement disorder doctors. So I didn't just see just regular doctors that were ignorant of this disease. I actually saw movement disorder doctors who knew all about Huntington's disease. And they told me, they said, "This is the one thing we know you don't have. Your Black people don't get Huntington's, period." They said, "That's it. We know for sure that you don't have Parkinson's." They ruled out Parkinson's because of the actual physical exam. They said, "You don't have Parkinson's." And then they said, "We can definitely rule out Huntington's because you're not Caucasian." And I said, wow, okay. At the time, I was relieved because
Sure.
I believed all these doctors. They kept saying, "We don't see Black people, just don't get it. So that's the one thing you don't have to worry about." And so they went down a path of perhaps it's lupus, because a lot of people of color will get lupus. I was tested over and over for that. They just wouldn't let that go. I was tested for Sjogren's disease, Wilson's disease, just all types, Sydenham's chorea, just all types of diseases that they said could possibly explain the involuntary movements. And then I was told that perhaps I had some psychological trauma that I hadn't addressed in my life. And that is perhaps the reason for these involuntary movements. So that I went to see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said, "Absolutely not. Whatever you have, this is medical. This is not psychiatric in nature. And you need to go back to the drawing board or find another doctor to get diagnosed. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy." I went from doctor to doctor. I mentioned in the book the institutions. I went to tons and tons of institutions, but I didn't mention the names of the doctors, but they all know who they are. And I will never forget them. I will never forget them ever. Because after I was diagnosed, I made sure I called a lot of them on the list and informed them, "Hey, guess what? I have Huntington's." And they said, "Are you sure? Is that right?" You know, and
You're like, "Do you want to run the test again?"
and what's sad is I've had 2 DNA tests, by the way. I actually had 2. So I didn't have one, I had 2, and I had 2 in 2 different labs because they didn't want to believe the first test in the one lab. So it was horrible. And then after that, I had both. After fast forwarding many years after the fact, we could say 7 years after diagnosis, 7 to 8 years after diagnosis, I still had the same circle of neurologists in New York say to me, "I don't believe it. I don't believe you have Huntington's. You're moving and shaking and you have a cane," because I had a cane at the time. And they said, "You're moving and shaking. I don't think that I've never seen a Black person with Huntington's look like you or act like you." And this is the sad part is this individual that I'm referring to is the director of the movement disorder department in this particular institution. And that's really unfortunate that he is the director of this department. And what I actually ended up filing a complaint against him about that. When I walked up, because I was so upset after I had this meeting with him, he said, "I don't believe your diagnosis." I said, "I was diagnosed in 2012. And he says, "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it." And then I left. He goes, "You're Black. I don't believe it." So I left out of there, and I immediately contacted the ombudsman of the hospital. And I said, "I want to file a complaint against this doctor. He is supposed to be in charge of the movement disorder department, and something needs to be done because this is unacceptable for him to treat perhaps another person of color like this or whatever, based on personal biased opinions or whatever he had within himself. I just don't think he should be in charge of such a department." And anyways, I filed a report, and he got a little slap on the wrist, basically. He had his resident doctor call me back to apologize. And they simply said, "The doctor someone believes you now have Huntington's." He said, "We looked at the DNA test and we are convinced that it's true. The diagnosis is correct." And I said, "Wow, I didn't need your validation 7 years after being diagnosed and being heavily on medication. Are you kidding me?" But this is a type of behavior that I've got, and this all fueled me to write this book, because I said, you know what? There are a lot of medical individuals out there, medical professionals who are highly educated, that need to be aware of the fact that people of color, especially, can and do get Huntington's. They can. And it's the largest population of Huntington's people are in Venezuela. They're the largest group. And they're not considered Caucasian. But if you do your research like I did on the Venezuelan project that was done, you will learn that those people are connected. They have some commonalities with being colonized in that area. So they have some ancestry from the colonization. And that's where that gene they suspect came from.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just it makes me so angry, first of all, because we have so many friends that, and all of our friends actually say, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit. One of our dear friends that we could talk openly about him, he doesn't, is our friend Chris. And Chris is Black. He is gay and he has Huntington's. And he's like, "Anything else you want to give me?" He's the most amazing human, but walking this earth. But he has dealt with so much. Even he said, even within my community, I feel like even like a rare disease, I feel even rarer. And I feel like it doesn't have to be that way. We need to change that. We need to start understanding like we're just all Huntington's disease. And for people to pick us apart in the Huntington's, like this doctor, no, you're Black, you don't have Huntington's. You're too young to be symptomatic. This is something in your psyche. We can't let them, we have to, in our community, we have to be strong and not let them come into our circle, because how toxic and what they put you through. And
yeah. And what I decided to do was simply, I want to raise awareness with, obviously you can't, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? You can't, these doctors are set in their ways, and unfortunately they are who they are. Mm-hmm. And I would like to help change the way new doctors and up and coming scholars in this area of study are trained. I want to I really get excited to talk to like resident doctors. I love talking to medical interns. I love talking to nurses. I love talking to people who are in the thick of learning and their brains are still open to learning about what's possible and what's not, and what's, you know what I mean? And I just want them to know, don't believe your professor if your professor is saying that it only happens in people who are Caucasian only. And that's not correct. It's false. And I just want people to know. And then also I want to bring awareness to the fact that Environment does play a huge role in the age of onset and the way it is impacted on your body, because leaving that environment, the toxic environment, physical toxic environment, it definitely helped. But once that train leaves the track, once the train leaves the station, that's it. You can't undo what's already done. Once that trigger, once it's like turning a light on it and expecting it to shut off automatically. It's not going to shut off. That disease, now it's going to take its course. And I have no one knows how it's going to take its course with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Katie and I both have been able to read We Exist, and I'm wondering how you came up with that title. With what you're talking about, I can assume, but tell us a little bit about how you came to that title and what that means to you.
We Exist. I wanted to definitely raise awareness as being a part of the Huntington's community, being a person of color within the Huntington's community, but also on a global standpoint, all of us exist. All of us with Huntington's exist. I don't care what color you are. We're all in the same, we're all a family. And that's how I wanted to say, we do exist. We're a small community worldwide, but we are here. And we definitely have a voice. And that's what I wanted. And it's so unfortunate. A lot of people with Huntington's are not able to articulate themselves in the manner that I am still able to do that. So I really wanted to use my voice as long as I'm allowed to use my voice, as long as I'm allowed to, the man upstairs allows me to keep using my voice, I'm going to continue to use my voice.
We thank you. And everywhere I go, I'm like, it's funny. My We Exist book came and I was on a business trip. I was with a pharmaceutical company speaking for their whole company. And I was like, okay, so there's this book and everyone should read this book. Like you guys should all read it. If you're working in the Huntington space, you should read this book. So I think it's so brave to put this book, your words and your heart and your soul into this book. But I also think this is such a tool for people to learn, our scientific community, our medical and care community. This is a tool. They should read it. So going there, can you please read us a little piece of your book? And then if you read that, I'm going to read you one of my favorite things that drew me in.
Aw, thank you. Okay. I'm going to read my final thoughts because it is a little bit of a synopsis of the book. Final thoughts. As I pin down these final thoughts, a profound sense of gratitude washes over me. The opportunity to share my story, my experiences, and my perspective with you has been an incredible privilege. I want you to know, without a doubt, that you are not alone in your struggles. Life has a way of testing us in unique and often unexpected ways. Still, the beauty lies in our collective resilience. Just as I've shared my journey, there are countless others who are navigating their own paths, facing their own battles, and finding their own victories. You are part of a vast community of individuals who understand what it means to persevere, adapt, and thrive despite life's hurdles. As you embrace your own journey, be courageous. Know that every challenge you face is an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. Embrace change, celebrate your milestones, find your tribe, and prioritize self-care as a means of fortifying your resilience. I want to express my heartfelt thanks for reading my story and for allowing me to be a part of your life, even if only briefly. I leave you with this message of hope. The human spirit is capable of extraordinary feats. No matter the circumstances, there is always a path forward, and there are always reasons to hope and believe in the possibilities that lie ahead.
The whole book is like that. The writing is so beautiful. And you could see you just dug so deep into your soul to write this book. I get this book and I was so excited. You and I connected. I went and bought it that day. And then right away, I started opening it. I started reading it. But this is what drew me in, that I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to keep reading. So make no mistake, this book is not about victimhood, nor is it just a memoir recounting personal difficulties. It is a lantern lighting the way for others facing their own shadows. It is an invitation to find strength in the face of adversity. to forge ahead with determination, and to believe unwaveringly in the potential for a brighter tomorrow. It is a declaration of empowerment, a journey about reclaiming agency over your life, standing tall and declaring to the world we exist.
Aw.
Incredible.
Incredible. Absolutely.
Everything about it. You guys, We Exist. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's available at Walmart now, I heard. You guys get this book. It's such an incredible book. And we will have Tanita at our events this year, a couple of our events. So hopefully we'll have books available. She can talk to you about the book. Get it before so you guys can have a conversation, because I'm sure a lot of her words are yours too. Like she said, we're one community and we all face a lot of the same struggles. Thank you for being brave and writing this book. Thank you for writing it so beautifully. My goodness, you have a way with words. There is no doubt about that. And any final thoughts at all before we jump off here?
I definitely want to thank you both for inviting me to your show. I just love the fact that you guys do Help for HD is out there helping people like me. It means so much. Doing this work is a lot. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, and I just commend you both for all of your work and hard work that you do for the community.
Thank you. We are excited to give you a hug in Houston.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
And showing you a Help for HD party. They're a lot of fun. You'll be with your community. It'll be the safest place. And I think you'll probably go, okay, when's our next one? Thank you guys for tuning in today. We Exist. Make sure you guys go out and get the book. It is amazing. It'll draw you in. It's a read that you will get through in probably a couple days, to be honest. Until next time, do not forget to this video, subscribe to the channel below, and ring the bell for notifications when more videos like this come out. Until next time.